You are 8 years old and summer vacation feels like it will never end. You are 35 and December arrives before you finished unpacking from January. Nothing about the clock changed. Something about you did. And the strange part is almost everyone on Earth experiences this exact same speeding up on almost exactly the same schedule. That's not a coincidence. That's a bug in how your brain measures time. And once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. Start with the actual math because it explains more than it should. When you are 5 years old, 1 year is 20% of your entire life. When you are 50, 1 year is 2%. Every single year gets mathematically smaller compared to everything that came before it. Psychologists call this proportional theory, and it's part of the answer. But it's not the whole answer, because if it were only math, time would speed up smoothly, like a car slowly accelerating. It doesn't. It speeds up in a very specific, lumpy way, and the lumps tell you something the math alone can't. Memory researchers have mapped this out by asking people of every age to recall the most vivid memories of their entire lives. Line those memories up on a timeline, and something odd appears. There's a massive spike of memories from roughly age 15 to 25, and then the density drops off a cliff. Researchers name this the reminiscence bump. Your 20s are wildly overrepresented in your own memory compared to how many actual days you lived through them. Here's why that bump exists. Your brain isn't recording time, it's recording novelty. The first time you fall in love, the first time you move out, the first job, the first heartbreak, the first time you're truly responsible for yourself, all of that lands in your 20s for most people. And each first gets carved into memory with enormous detail because your brain treats new as important. Once you hit your 30s and 40s, the firsts become rare. Drive to work, answer the emails, cook the dinner, repeat. Your brain, quite reasonably, stops bothering to encode most of it in detail. And here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. A period your brain didn't bother to encode is a period that will feel, in hindsight, like it barely happened at all. This is why people who travel constantly often report that a single month abroad feels longer, in memory, than an entire ordinary year back home. It's not that time moved differently, it's that novelty was moving differently, and your memory only keeps a receipt for novelty. Neuroscientists have a separate, more physical explanation running alongside this one, and it comes from something called the internal clock hypothesis. Your brain doesn't have a wristwatch. It estimates the passage of time using dopamine-driven neural pulses, something like an internal metronome, counting ticks and converting ticks into a felt sense of duration. In children, this internal metronome runs fast, packing more subjective ticks into the same 60 seconds. As you age, dopamine production naturally declines, the metronome slows down, and the same 60 real seconds get represented by fewer neural ticks. Fewer ticks means less felt duration. Your brain is, quite literally, running a slower internal clock than it used to, and a slower internal clock makes external time feel like it's racing past you. Put the two mechanisms together and you get a genuinely brutal 1-2 punch. The proportional math means each year is a shrinking fraction of your life. The declining novelty means each year gets encoded with less memory detail. And the slowing internal clock means each year is felt with less subjective duration while it's happening. Three separate systems, all pointing the same direction, all quietly agreeing to speed up your 40s. So here's the part almost nobody tells you, and it's the actual point of this video. If novelty is the variable driving memory density, then novelty is the one variable you can deliberately manipulate. You cannot make yourself 22 again. You cannot undecline your dopamine baseline, but you can absolutely put more first times back into your life on purpose. And the research on this is surprisingly direct. In one well-known study, participants were asked to estimate how long a 2-week vacation felt, both while planning it and afterward in memory. A vacation packed with new activities, new places, new food, was remembered as significantly longer than a vacation spent relaxing in one familiar location, even when both trips were exactly 14 days. The relaxing trip felt pleasant in the moment and then evaporated from memory almost immediately. The novel trip felt, in retrospect, like it had lasted nearly a month. This is sometimes called the vacation paradox, and it runs backward from what you'd expect. The vacation that felt slowest and most uneventful while you were living it is the one that shrinks fastest in memory afterward. The vacation that felt busiest and most disorienting while you were living it is the one that expands in memory, sometimes for years. Your felt experience in the moment and your remembered experience later are almost inversely related. And if you're only optimizing for comfort in the moment, you are quietly optimizing for a life that will feel shorter when you look back on it. Zoom out. And this stops being a fact about vacations and becomes a fact about entire decades. People who deliberately keep introducing genuine novelty into adulthood, a new skill, a new city, a new hobby that scares them a little, a new kind of conversation, report something remarkable in longitudinal surveys. Their 40s and 50s don't compress the way everyone else's do. Not because their calendar years are different, because their brains still have first times to encode, and first times are the only currency memory actually accepts. There's an old philosophical idea, memento mori, remember that you will die, usually treated as something grim carved onto a tombstone. But look at what these researchers are actually finding, and it reframes into something closer to useful instructions. Your sense of a long, rich life isn't produced by the number of days on the calendar. It's produced by the number of distinct, memorable days your brain bothered to keep. Two people can live the identical number of years and end up with completely different amounts of felt life, purely based on how much novelty each of them built in. Which brings us back to that 8-year-old summer that felt endless. It wasn't endless because you were young. It was endless because almost every single day of it was new. School was new. Friends were new. Your own body and your own mind were new to you. You weren't experiencing more time. You were encoding more of it. And the honest, slightly uncomfortable takeaway is this. If your last 5 years already feel like they blurred into one short, forgettable stretch, that's not time accelerating beyond your control. That's your brain accurately reporting how little of it you gave it a reason to remember. You don't get more hours by wanting them, but you can, starting today, hand your brain a few more first times to hold on to. Do that consistently, and in 20 years, this decade won't be a blur. It'll be the one you actually remember living.